Okay, so if we look at the DFS again, all right, so I want to review that in terms of looking at this, what it does with servers, and then I'm going to I'll blow my configuration away, and we'll end up doing it again. Because you can actually deploy the DFS in it's like 5-10 minutes. I mean, it's actually a quick install. So, and I know a bunch of people kind of were, their eyes were glossed over. They were just really confused on that. So I want to review that whole concept again. Okay. So DFS, in terms of, you know, what it is this distributed file system, and the whole goal here is that we want to have data that's being replicated and stored on two different independent servers. Okay, so in this case here, let's just say we have over here, we've got my file server, this FS1 running. Okay, and this FS1, we'll kind of mimic it like our class. So it has this over here has a C drive, right, for the OS. Any file server, you'd always want to separate your operating system, okay, from your data. Okay, so then we have an additional, I think it's the E drive in our case. So we have this E drive over here for basically data. So this is going to be our data, where we're going to store the data. It's dedicated to this E drive. Okay. So now we also have over here, okay, this, we'll call it FS2. So we've got file server 2. It's the same setup. It has a C drive for the OS, okay, and then it's going to have an E drive over here for this data. This will be our data drive. Okay, and these is connected. Obviously, we've got some back-end switch. Okay, this is our classroom switch. This running. And this basically is connected, and this is connected. Boom. So we're on the same switch, and we've got the same basic setup on here. So the whole goal now is to be able to create a folder in this E drive over here. Okay, so let's just create this, data folder here. So I've got this data folder existing in this E drive, and the whole goal here is that I want to have all of this replicate over to this data folder over here. All right, so now I've got these two folders that are basically being a replicate. Okay, there's a replicating data back and forth between the two. Okay, so I need to know, the server names, and then where I'm going to store that. And then again, what happens now is that instead of accessing data, okay, so if we look at the DFS share, right, our DFS share can actually be our network. So this can be basically our network, in terms of the FQDN. So this is the kind of the FQDN of your network. Okay, so whack, and then whack your DFS, okay, your namespace. So this share actually goes to both places. That's the whole point, is that this is distributed. If one server goes offline, I still have essentially another copy that I can connect to. Okay? So it knows that I have this namespace, and this namespace is what really then is connecting this stuff back and forth. Okay? So instead of connecting to a given server share and access in it, I'm going to connect to a namespace share and access that data. Okay? So far so good. Any questions with regards to this overall big architecture of that? Okay, so let's dive in a little bit more on the overhead and well, let's look at what this looks like, okay, in terms of the data that is there, and then I can blow it away fairly quickly, and then I'll try to recreate it as well. Okay, we'll recreate it from scratch and make some more screenshots, and then we'll move on after that. Okay? Okay, so you guys can see okay, yeah? Okay, so let me see what VMs I have running. I think I have these running, otherwise I gotta start them back up. So let's see, now I gotta start all that. So this is the other class. Let me just shut these VMs down here. This is from, actually just gonna save them. Save, so you can save the VMs fairly quickly. Sometimes it's quicker than just turn them all the way off, let them shut down. So I'm just saving these, and then I've got to bring up our other infrastructure for other ones. So these ones I already saved, so now I can just start these ones. This was 2008, this was our 2012 Europe DC. I don't really need that one, I need this guy. We'll start this. Don't need this one here I can save. And then our 117, I got to turn this one on, start that up. Okay. So I think I got our core infrastructure. So our 2008, this was our DC that's running. And then we have our 2012, this was another DC that's running. And then I got my file server that's running as well. Okay. I don't necessarily need the Europe DC yet, but I got my core data, and I could open up my Windows 7 as well if I want to turn this guy on. I could turn this guy, and that would give me something to connect to those shares. So I'll let this boot up while we're running. So hopefully this guy starts us up. So let me pull up first this is the file server 1. Okay, it has data in it. And then let me pull up I think this was our 2012 R2. This I think is DC, this is DC2 I believe. Yeah. So this is acting as whatever, file server 2, okay? And so this one's still chugging away, so we'll let this guy finish booting up as well, okay? I think I have DFS on here already, but we can see what the DFS is doing, okay, in terms of how it's set up, and then we'll, what I'll do is I'll blow it away, and we'll reinstall it just for that good practice. And you can do this on yours too as well. So if you guys did install yours, you had problems, we can just basically delete all of our DFS shares, DFS namespace, and then we can just recreate it. Okay, we should be able to do that. So let me see what's on first with regards to, if we kind of look again at our hard drives, we have a C drive, it's our OS, then we have this E drive, and under this E drive by default it created this DFS root, and then I created this data folder that I have underneath it. Okay, so the core data folder is basically is this DFS namespace. So let's look at our DFS information. So I pull up my DFS management. And then we'll just look at some of the namespace and then the replication that's running here as well. Okay. So right now, I have under here is this DFS namespace of this data under K. Vonberg WAC data. So the server name that's being replaced by the DFS namespace is this K Vonberg, okay? And then the share here is this data, all right? So it exists in terms of the actual data. That data is physically located on my E drive under this DFS root data folder, okay? And so you can see I created some folders here. Right now I'm on DC2, okay? So if I go to a command prompt and, host name. So I'm on the server DC2. So if I just go there and I create some files on this server, and I'm going to go ahead and create a folder and say this was, folder created on DC2, right? So I created this folder on DC2, and then here's a text file. So this was a file created on DC2 as well, okay? Just put some data in here and save it, okay? So I've created this folder and some files on DC2. So I should be able to, get to that data here. I should be able to get to it via my network share. So my network share now is whack, and now it's the K Vonberg, okay, is the actual domain name whack data. So I go to this, K Vonberg over here, boom, and that becomes the share name. And so you see I've got some data that I've created over here, and here's some test data. And then we're going to look and see what other data I can access this as well. All right. So I'm accessing this from basically this network share. Everything hasn't fully replicated in terms of replicated over here because it's a little bit different than what's in the data. Okay. So, but I want to go to my other server now, and let's see if that data is there. You might have to give it some time just because both of these servers now they've only been on for a few seconds, and so my gut feeling is there's going to be some replication lag. I got to wait a little bit. But here's the FS1. So this is the other file server that has the DFS, and we can go open this up and look at this. And this should be, if this goes and refreshes, it should basically see the same thing. And so this might need a refresh on here. We'll see if data's been. Now I might need to reboot because these guys were frozen. So here's the same exact share. And yeah, so data is actually getting replicated. So this was you can see here, this was the folder that I created, right, on DC2. But now you can see that data got replicated over here to my FS1 server. And then the file's on there as well, okay? So the data portion here is actually getting replicated as I expected on here. Okay, if this guy here, this just needs to connect, and this guy will end up showing the same namespace. This just needs to basically refresh, and then it should pull up the same info. So we'll give this a few minutes to refresh. But the actual replication is actually working on there. And so same thing here. If I'm on this server, I should be able to create now. Again, I'm on FS1, and so if I go there and create now a new folder, so I can say here, this is folder over here, the folder created on FS1, okay, and then this will be a file. So I'll make a new text file. This file created on FS1, okay. And then what I'm expecting here is that this folder and this file that I created here on file server 1 is going to be replicated over to my other DC2. So if we go there and spend, whatever, a few seconds. But now if we dive over here to our DC2 and go in here, let's see if that data then got replicated. So I kind of refresh this, go back here, and we'll see, and bam, that data that was over here created at 6:30, so that was created just literally, in the same minute here. All right, so I created, it was pretty much instantly, this here was very quickly copied over. Okay, so that's kind of this whole goal, whole purpose of seeing the DFS is that basically we're copying this data over on there. And eventually this stuff replicates. I should be able to get there. Let's see if I can access the data via the server name share, right? So the server name would be going, and this server I'm on right now is DC2. So if I went to DC2 WAC data, right, it shows me this data. It's interesting. It's not giving me a full view. So this was created on DC2, but I'm not seeing, interestingly enough, the actual data that it is over here. So I've got a couple other folders. So there's something going on with permissions or something with regards to seeing the data over the network, which is kind of interesting. So, question, comment, Tom?
So are there two DFSs? Is there one where they just basically sync, and then another where you could have it like for backup replicate somewhere?
Yeah. So the question is, can you set up? I mean, it's basically meant to sync, and that's the whole purpose. Is these things will sync, but you can set up the lag. You can set up schedule for it to back up, and yeah, you can. People use DFS also to purely have a backup copy, and so meaning they'll set up a whole DFS server. Maybe they have one at a different site, and they've got really good connectivity between the sites, and they'll set up so that it just replicates data. But it's meant to be kind of a both-way replication. You can probably configure it maybe so it does one way. By default, it does both ways. And so if you're not ever editing data on the other server, it's just going to basically copy data over. Okay. But there is something interesting going on with regards to the getting it. This is a permission issue. We could dive in and troubleshoot it, but if we go to now the same thing. If I go whack, and now if I try to go to FS1, so my file server 1 whack data, I should be able to get there, and I can't. Interestingly enough, so let's just see if we can ping FS1. So I can ping FS1. But it doesn't have any share that's that's in there. I can get to DC, so FS1 whack. See if we get anything out there. It doesn't give me any shares, interestingly enough. But when I connect to the domain share, okay, the namespace, which is here, K von Berg whack data. Yeah, it's only seeing this my folder that I created on DC2. If we let this refresh, it's either going to refresh or there's a permission issue. Okay, one of the two. Because again, these servers have only been on for literally a few minutes. Right. Question, Robert?
If you got if your intention is backup, you had another drive in your machine, would you want to go this route, or would it just be better to read and mirror it?
Well, again, the question here is that rather than have it on the same machine, okay, sure, you've got some fault tolerance with adding another hard drive and putting in a RAID, but this is actually the entire box. All right, so you can set this up so that you have high availability. So what if your entire server goes down? All right, if your server gets turned off, it doesn't matter how many copies of RAID you have or how many, the server's off. All right, you lose connectivity to that server, you're going to lose access to that data. In this case, with DFS, you're putting that data on two different physical servers, okay, completely different servers on there. So if one server has an issue, it can just fall back to the other server. That's kind of the whole purpose of it, okay? So anyway,
Could you replicate whole VHDs?
Well, yeah, you can. I mean, you can, but it doesn't. You wouldn't want to put working VMs on there. But if you exported a VM, absolutely. If you exported a VM, just put a VHD on there, then it would replicate that. But it's not recommended to. I would think to put a working VM that's getting updated every second and have that replicated off. Right? There's other technology for that. You wouldn't use DFS. You'd use the Hyper-V replica. Okay, to do that. Hyper-V replica uses Hyper-V, and that's specifically designed to replicate VHDs in real time. Okay, so you wouldn't use DFS for that. Now there is a new feature in Server 2016 that actually is a 2016 replica. So there's a replica feature, and that's to actually take an entire drive and have a replica of that entire partition. Okay, similar to like DFS, but there's new features and new functionality with that. So some of the stuff we'll see is going to get superseded by Server 2016, some of the DFS stuff. Okay, so the storage replica is a great, that actually is yeah, getting replaced. It's replacing some of the DFS functionality. But it's kind of, yeah, there'll be some cool stuff with stored replica. Stored replica will take an entire replica, entire storage replica, and you can basically replicate that to another box in the server. All right. Or even, I'm sure that's going to go to the cloud as well. You'll be able to put that on Azure or put on some backup. Okay. All right. So again, if we wanted to blow all this stuff away and just look at setting this up again from scratch, it's not. I can go then. I can just delete the namespaces. So I can go there and here I want to delete the replication, everything associated with it. And I can go there and find my DFS namespace, delete the DFS namespace. I'm going to delete everything and all the namespace and all of its folders, right? So basically I've pretty much wiped out everything from my DFS. So if we go look at the folders here now, I still have some data, but I can go there and actually now purge my data folder, right? And something's still accessing this, so I've got to give it probably the DFS has a lock on this. So see if we can delete any of this stuff on here. It might not let us. It's not letting us delete it here. And then I do the same thing to go over to my file server. This was FS1, and that data is basically gone out of here and deleted over here. And it still doesn't want to let me. Let's just see if it's a permission issue. I can't believe it's a permission issue. And my administrators have full control. I think it's just because DFS might still have some access to that. And it says, hey, you require more permissions. You shouldn't need any more permissions. We can see if it's made. I don't think it wants to run anything as an administrator. That just doesn't make too much sense to me. So I think it's just a matter of time. We give this a little more time, and then it would lose. Or the next thing would be to reboot the box, and let's see if it has any DFS stuff over here that I need to basically remove as well. So it does have this here. So it might need to be just removed over here. So remove, and that's just I think just displaying it, but there's nothing actually in the namespace. And see if we could refresh this as well. So there shouldn't be anything in my namespace. Shouldn't be anything over here. Something still might have a hold on with regards to DFS of accessing those. And that should be fine. This should be gone too. If we reopen this, everything should be gone now in terms of my namespace and my replication. It's still showing this, so remove this one. I'm surprised it's still showing this. Okay. And then if we pull up our other box, this was our first one. Okay, there shouldn't be anything with regards to in here as well. All right, I don't see anything that's in there. Now there is, what's this domain system volume? What the heck is this? Just for the heck of it, while we're in here. What is that stuff? That's Active Directory. So some of the stuff in Active Directory, it actually relies on DFS replication to actually replicate some of the DFS stuff. Okay. Question, comment?
If you delete that one,
you wouldn't want to delete that. That would cause all kinds of problems with Active Directory replication. So you wouldn't want to delete the domain system stuff that's on there. Okay, that would definitely. And you can see here that it's DC1 and DC2. And these are the domain controllers, and it's showing you basically what it's replicating. This is the domain information with regards to that. That's some Active Directory stuff in there. You don't want to mess with that. That stuff you'd want to for sure leave as is. Okay. And so if we go look here, see if it's going to let me delete this. It still might have some hold on it. And so now finally it did let me delete that. So now my data is gone from there. So that let me delete it. And then if we go back and see if it lets you delete it from our file server 1, see if it's going to be gone from here. And here if I try to delete this. And then so there was just needed a little bit of time for DFS to fully finish kind of uninstalling and reconfiguring those. So now if I wanted to re-add and redo the DFS stuff. So I'll do it again and I'll make some recordings of this, okay? And then I think what I recommend you guys just kind of watch, and you guys will get these screenshots as well. And I would try doing it terms of step by step. I think it's just going to be easier if you end up watching and just kind of viewing it. Okay, so I'll stop the recording. So again, so I've already added the DFS role. That's the first thing is you got to go to my features and add that, and that's going to be under a file services. And so I've already added the role. So adding the role gives you this DFS management interface. So now I can basically play around with this interface. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I want to create a DFS namespace. All right, so I right click and I can basically go through this wizard to make a new namespace. So when I make a new namespace, I'm first going to say, hey, what server is going to be in this? And so this over here is the server I'm at, so that's FS1. Okay, I could also go there and browse for it, but I'm on FS1. Okay, so that's the server.
We did it on EC2 last
Yeah,
time.
I did. Yeah, you can change it around. And so now I'm entering enter a name for the namespace, and it's telling you that this name will appear after the server or the domain name. Okay, such as whack the domain name / in there. Okay, so over here I'll call this guy. I'm just going to give this a different one, so I'm going to call this data 1. Okay, so I'll have a data 2. And there was the look at the settings in terms of the permissions that were on here, so we can look at that. So by default, it's dumping this in the C. Okay, so I don't want this in the C. I want this in my E drive. Okay, so I want this to be in my E. And then we want to give administrators have full access. Other users will have read and write access. I'm just basically giving different people, the permissions that they want. Okay. So pretty so far, pretty simple. All I've done is basically the shared folder is going to be called data 1. The namespace server is FS1, and I'm giving it the local path for the shared folder. Okay. All right, and then we just continue through with the wizard. Okay. And so now it's saying, is this going to be a domain-based or a standalone? Okay, we want this to be domain-based. Okay, so domain-based is going to be the domain name is going to basically replace the server name. If it was a standalone, then it would be the server name, whack share. But here, since I'm doing the domain-based namespace, it's going to take my domain name. Okay, and then next. Okay, and then it just gives you the basic information that it needs, and so we'll then create. Okay. So it's going to just create the namespace. If there's any errors or anything, it basically will tell you. Okay, so that's basically the first step. Pretty simple. Okay, so I'll stop this. I was just simply creating the namespace. So we stop that, and we'll save this, and I'll put this in. Let's see, where are we at? Yeah, this will be lab 09 underscore and 1123 15. Okay. Oops, that's going to be the. Let's make a new folder first. Lab 09 underscore 1123 15. And then we'll give it a name. This is 01. This is our DFS namespace create. Okay, so basically we created the DFS namespace with that. Okay. So now if we go and look at some of the settings, then we could go and look at the properties, okay, of this. And here's some basic information. It has some referrals and has this advanced in terms of optimizing for consistency, optimizing for scalability. Okay, so far nothing too drastic, and it hasn't done anything with regards to replicating yet. Okay, I have a namespace server. So this namespace server is this FS1. Okay, so I have information with regards to the properties also of the namespace server. Okay, these were the share permissions that are set up. So right now everybody just kind of has the change and read. Administrators has full. And remember, these are the share permissions versus the NTFS permission. Okay, and you also have some advanced stuff that's on there. Okay, so I've got some basic information, delegation, search. So I've got some basic info with regards to that. there was the property for, I wanted to look at was, let me see if we find it on here. Enable access-based enumeration. So access-based enumeration, essentially it hides folders that users don't even have permission to view. Okay, so we'll leave this. You know, and again, that's if I created folders with different users or didn't give users permission, then it basically hides them, so they don't even see them. Okay, so we'll come back and we'll turn on this access-based enumeration. So it just depends on your environment, whether you want to have access-based enumeration on or you want to have it off. Okay, so now I'll leave it off for now, and we'll come back to that a bit later. Okay, so now I need to set up the replication. Okay, so I'll start the new recording. And so now when I do the replication, I go into my replication, and same thing, I've got a little GUI wizard where I can make a replication group. Okay? And this is a little more steps in building the replication than in building the actual DFS namespace. Okay? So this is going to be a multi-purpose replication group. Okay? So basically we're configuring between 2 or more servers. Okay? So for publication, content sharing. Okay? And then next. So we'll give this a name. Okay? So I could call this basically my data. All right. Replication. Okay. And then you can give it optional name. The domains is the default what I want there. And then I'm just going to call it, that's fine, the data replication next. So now where we need to add and select the 2 or more servers that are going to become part of this replication group. So it kind of makes sense. So I'm going to add the given server here that I'm at. So I have file server 1, right, that I want to add. And so I add file server 1. And then I also want to add my DC2. Okay, so I'm adding both, or DC2, thank you. So you remove that and add, we want to add here DC2. I was saying DC2, but I was having that. So I've got my file server 1 running, and then it's going to try to find, it just needs to go find our DC2. So I should be able to find that unless something happened to my DC2 server. Okay. And it's checking, so it should find that unless something's wrong here. If it's wrong, then we got to give us more work to do. All right, if we can't find out what's wrong with DC2. So I did find DC2. Okay, so that's good. So I've got those 2 set up. It's on there, and then next. Okay, so now this is the replication topology. Okay, so there's a concept of hub and spoke where you've got basically a hub and it's replicated, or full mesh. Full mesh means that basically every single server is replicating it, between that's in there. Okay, so we're gonna do full mesh. And then now you're telling it how do you want it to replicate. We basically want it all the time, full bandwidth. Okay, so this is where you can set up a schedule for replication. So if you want to replicate, data at night, you can maybe start it at 10 p.m. and replicate till 6 in the morning. If you're doing some type of backup scenario. Okay. And now it's saying select the server that contains the content that you want to be basically this primary member. So we'll make we'll make FS1 primary. Okay, that's in there. And we'll hit next here. Okay. It doesn't matter. Either one of these can be. It just depends on. Here I'm creating everything on FS1. I'm on FS1, so I'll leave it as FS1. Okay, so it should be fine. See how something errors out. Yeah. And the next thing after this is that we have to find the folders. Right? We got to find the folders that we want to replicate. So the folders are going to be under that E in the DFS root, and then that data 1 folder. Okay, that's basically the folder that I want to replicate. So while this is chugging away, let's just look at our folder structure. This thing should find it unless this errors out. But let me just pause this for a second. So the folders that I want to have is going to be this E, DFS root, and this data 1. So that's basically the folder that I'm going to want to replicate. And I want to have the same path and the same structure on both servers. It's going to be easier to basically to manage on there. Okay, so this thing is still, we'll see what's going on here. It's taking a little bit more time than I wanted to find this primary server, but we'll give it another minute or so and see if it has a issue on here. All right, so still is thinking. Okay, that it shouldn't. I don't think I had to reboot these. It might be something going on from when I. It's a best practice if you wiped everything out from that DFS and then recreate. It's always good to reboot the servers versus kind of going from here. Just because when you reboot, it'll really clear anything out, any settings, something that's still hanging around. But we'll give this another minute or two. If it still has issues, then it's either going to pop up some error message, okay, that we'd be able to look up, or I doubt this thing will just completely hang. If we went and looked at our CPU usage, we could see if something just kind of hanging here. But I don't think it's gonna hang. So I'll just go look at our performance. So CPU is okay. I mean, memory is fine. CPU is fine. So it's not like I think it just needs a little more time. So it might be that I've taken this away and actually done this. A couple times even before we did this. So, but if anything has happened, I think it could be that these servers have only been they were saved and then turned them on again. So let's just verify we have connectivity between. This is FS1, so this guy shouldn't even matter with regards to. It's going to have to connect to it, so we can just make sure that whatever we have connectivity between DC2. Because it will eventually have to go there and contact this DC2. But I've got connectivity, at least I can ping DC2. And this thing is still just hanging here. So we shouldn't need to change this. But I have to come back to this. I don't want to, we'll give this another minute or two. I don't want to dive too much into this if this thing hangs. But you end up always, when things do end up, a little bit abnormal, you end up learning in terms of figuring out what's wrong. You'll end up learning a lot more. And that's a generality. You'll see that, whenever something doesn't work out exactly as it's supposed to, and then you end up looking at, for instance, log files or figuring an event viewer, using some other tools to figure out, hey, why did this thing hang? And you got to dive into it, okay, and figure out, hey, what happened here? What's causing this? Is something, something hanging from here? And one of the first places I'll go is like event viewer, and look at event viewer, see if event. But right now, it hasn't even given me an error message, right? So I would assume stuff's working here. If I wanted to just verify if we have good connectivity, I could bring open, and that I should be able to bring open, for instance. It doesn't have actually Active Directory on this, but I was going to bring open, for instance, like the Active Directory and reconnect to the different servers. But let me just verify. I'm going to open up our Hyper-V Manager and just make sure that these, because Active Directory has to be on and functioning. So let me just verify this server's on, and this was our DC. This was the original one. And yeah, so this was the first domain controller that came up, and this one had all of the FSMA roles initially installed on here, but all my FSMA roles should be on DC2. It's good they were, right? I'm on DC1, and then had to go there and find it, so that's good. So I know I've got connectivity at least between these two boxes. So that looks good. Let's just go and log on to DC2 for a second. So here's my, turn this one off, this is my DC2. So let's just see if this has any issues. I don't think so, but what the heck, let's just see if this has issues connecting with FS1. So I can ping, so this looks okay. And let me just pull up Active Directory on here, just to verify. And so Active Directory looks like it's pulling up okay. It's connecting here to my DC2. If I wanted to, I could try to change domain controllers. This would really verify that I'm actually connecting now. And so now I've got really good, I'm connecting to the DC1 domain controller, and I can change back to itself, which is the DC2. Okay, and this just is change domain controller DC2. Because again, all the stuff is the same. And so I should be able to switch back and forth. All my Active Directory data is the same. So I know Active Directory is functioning. I'm sure DNS is running. So let's see if what it did when we go back to our over here and see if it finished or if it's still hanging. So it's still, this thing is still hanging here. So rather than just check out, I mean, we'll let this run, but I want to dive. We'll come back here, and then I want to dive into some new stuff. Maybe we'll see if this guy finishes in a few minutes. Okay. So diving into the new stuff, you want to look at with some GPO stuff. Okay. So we'll put this on pause for a second or two. We'll kind of just see if it comes back, and I'll basically log on to another box, and then we'll switch gears here to looking at GPOs. Okay, so with GPOs, the whole concept here with switching gears with our GPOs is that I want to be able to leverage, all right, Active Directory and have it do some cool stuff for me. Okay, so we're gonna use some simple GPOs that I think are core stuff and in some domains here of being able to automate user profile stuff. Okay, so stuff that you guys should know this manually. So I'm not going to dive into. If you're in the other class, we did cover the profile information. But if we kind of look at GPOs, all right, in general, there's a gazillion. I mean there's thousands and thousands of GPOs that you can use up there. So diving in and looking at GPOs. All right, so GPO is a group policy object, and essentially, to really leverage these GPOs, you got to have Active Directory running. Okay, so part of that is that the GPOs they really rely on Active Directory in terms of being able to fully utilize them. Okay, there's local GPOs and local policies you can do, but on a big domain, a big network, you're going to want to leverage Active Directory, be able to deploy these guys dynamically to your different users and computers on there. So first thing with GPOs is where can we apply the GPOs? Where can we apply them?
Domain level.
So I can apply the GPO at the domain level. Where else?
Site and OU.
Very good. At the site level, and then at the OU level. Okay. I would say the OU is probably the most common structure for deploying those. Right? Can you deploy a GPO to a group? Yes, no?
Yeah.
Not really. I mean, you can only deploy it to a domain, a site, or an OU. Okay, so you can't really deploy it necessarily to a group, but you can filter. Okay, so you can use filtering, and you can filter with groups. Okay, so there's this concept of a filter. And a filter does allow you to only apply, in terms of the permission, the GPO to a given group. But still, the GPO is targeted at a domain, a site, or an OU. But even when you target it within a given OU, you have the ability to then filter that to a more specific group. By default, authenticated users have access to read the GPO. Okay? So you can, if you end up really knowing and tweaking, you can actually have GPOs applied to different groups. And I've done that, and I kind of want to show you that. It's really cool to have all of your groups, and I just add a user to a given group, and all the stuff that I want to happen happens automatically, okay, in terms of mapping the correct drive for that user because he's in the correct group. So a management group might get a management drive. You know, it's in there. A executive sales might get the sales drive. So you want to automate that functionality even more. So you can do it with just OUs, but you can also filter that even more with regards to you know, filtering at different levels. And then once we apply, you know, we target this GPO at the domain site OU, what's the next processing that gets happen? Where do you actually then process the GPO? Who do you actually target the next level in terms of target? It actually is applied where? Where does it actually get applied?
To the user or the computer.
From here it either goes to the user, okay, or the computer. Okay, so these are the big, I mean, that's the big 30,000 foot level of, first, I can apply an OU, a domain, a site, an OU, but any of these, this is where it actually, you're targeting that. Once you've targeted that, the actual GPO, it's either going to take effect at the user level or at the computer level. Okay, and again, I think we've mentioned that. If we apply a given GPO policy at the user level, if that user logs on to 10 different machines, will that policy follow the user around? Yeah, because it's basically tied to the user account. It's tied to the user logon. Now, if you have a computer GPO and you have 10 different users logging on to the same exact computer, will that policy take effect even though it's 10 different users?
Yes.
Yeah, because you've targeted that at the computer. Okay, so again, you're able to target these at a user or at a computer. When you target it at the computer, it doesn't matter who logs on to that computer, that policy gets applied. Okay? So for instance, if you have something where you want to lock down the control panel so nobody can access the control panel, right, and you did that at a computer level, anybody that logged on to that computer, regardless of their permission, they wouldn't be able to see the control panel because you've logged it at the computer level. So it affects all users that log on when you do it at the computer level. Whereas if you do it at the user level, it's only affecting that given user. Does that make sense? Question, Ronald? You have a question?
Yeah, it seems like the GPOs would mirror organizational policies.
Well, I mean, it's not so much that it depends. I mean, if you have settings, they can. You know, they can do how are you defining an organizational policy?
Like information assurance policies or information security policies.
I mean, there's a ton of settings. So you can do security settings, and you can have GPOs like password policies. You know, if you want, that can be set through a GPO. I mean, almost any setting that you can get through the GUI. Okay, if you can go somewhere and get properties and hit the settings of something, or Internet Explorer, or even Word. I mean, any configuration that you can apply to a computer, you can do it through a GPO. Okay, so you got to think of that as that you've got 1,000 machines out there, and you want to set certain security settings or just certain functionality. Maybe you want a wallpaper, right? Wallpaper is something you can configure, right? Well, you could go and have a group policy that would apply a certain wallpaper, okay? Or a security setting that's going to give you, it's going to lock your screen, right? So rather than have users decide when their screen locks, right? Maybe you're in a little higher security environment, and you want the screens to lock when there's no activity for 45 seconds. Okay, you could create a GPO that would apply, and then their screen would just lock. Okay, after 45 seconds. All right, and then, so it depends. It can be real annoying for some users. Oh my gosh, or you could set it for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever is appropriate for your organization. Okay, that's the whole key there. So you can do all kinds of GPO functionality with GPOs. Okay, all right. So I'm looking at, I'm going to see if this guy, what it did with our DFS manager. I'm just curious if this guy finished or if it it's still hung here, man. So I have a feeling this thing is just hung. The replication is hung, so it should have finished by now. So I'm going to cancel this darn wizard, and we'll have to come back to it. So we'll look at doing the GPO stuff that's in there. Okay. All right. So what I want to look at in terms of the GPO, simple GPO, what we'll look at is going to be let's just look at mapping, or let's look at creating either in terms of user profile stuff is very, very useful on a little network, but we do need a share to store stuff on there. So user profile, for instance, the My Documents. Okay, so the My Documents folder exists locally on a PC, and it'd be great to be able to redirect, okay? So redirect this to an actual server, okay? So that would be the cool thing. Like if I redirected my documents to a file server and then did that with an actual GPO. Okay, so that's kind of what the next thing we're going to look at is using the GPO to modify that, and then we'll log on to our machine and we'll verify that functionality works. Okay. All right. So I'm going to stop this and then we'll.
A question: how do you know if what kind of GPO is applying to you? Like, say, for example.